Welcome back to the $1 million Tipping Point podcast. Today we have Taylor Bradford, who is being interviewed, and she is a business strategist at Boss Girl Creative, a speaker, author, and podcast host of the Purposefully Aligned Entrepreneur. She has a book, Pillars and Purpose, How to Build a Business That Works for You. But most of all, and why I'm really excited to have her here, is she's a huge advocate for women and entrepreneurship and believes in fostering a sisterhood. So again, today we're going to get great advice from Taylor. I am hoping to learn a little bit more specifically on how she helps women with her business, one of her businesses, because as you'll find out, she has multiple businesses, and how she manages those multiple businesses. I think this is going to be an interesting discussion, especially for women entrepreneurs out there who might run more than one business. So don't forget, if you haven't downloaded the Money Mapper yet, you can go to the show notes at the bottom. You'll see a link, and it will help you discover financial independence as a business owner. So welcome, Taylor. Thank you for being on my show.
Thank you for having me.
So let's talk about your business right now, or businesses. You have a few of them. You've got Boss Girl Creative, which you recently changed and rebranded the name, right? It's Purposefully Aligned now.
So Boss Girl Creative became kind of like the publishing house as the umbrella. And then the podcast that sits underneath it is the Purposefully Aligned Entrepreneur podcast.
Okay. So you've got, I noticed, the Back Pocket VIP coaching, which is an interesting spin, I want to say, on the coaching, because it's a day long with Voxer back and forth. So you don't actually meet with the person on Zoom or anything. It's just Voxer going back and forth on questions they have with their business. You've got the Sisterhood membership, which is a monthly membership that you do with the Patreon. You've got Sugar Creek event rentals, and you're actually a roofer. You're in a roofing business as well with your husband. So there's a lot of balls up in the air right now. I want to kind of dive into the Back Pocket VIP coaching for a second. How does that work? Like, when people come to you and it's just Voxer back and forth, what are the most common reasons they might come to you for that service?
So I have been doing this for quite some time, coaching. And what frustrated the most with a traditional 30-minute, 60-minute, 90-minute coaching session is the lack of action taking, the lack of implementation. And so with the Back Pocket coaching sessions, I am actually able to, we riff back and forth through Voxer. You have a full day to do that. But the goal is for you to actually implement what it is that we are chatting about, whether or not we're building out a workflow, a sales funnel, a new email template, whatever it might be that you actually need help with. You're going to come to me, you're going to, lay out the framework with what hurdle you might be experiencing. And then we're going to vox back and forth, and it's going to give you time to implement what it is that we are talking about. And you're able to send me screenshots, you're able to send over videos so that I can go to your website live with you making changes. And it really allows you to spend time in that particular day actually doing something that's been on your to-do list or you've been scared to tackle, whatever it might be. And so because of a 60-minute session, a 90-minute session, and then you come back to the follow-up, let's say in a month or 2 months or 3 months, and you didn't do it, it was so frustrating for me because it just meant you delayed your progress forward, which is why I wanted to be able to be like, wait, no, we're not going to delay your progress. We're going to get you that thing that you've been needing to do, or the hurdle solved, or whatever. And it's life-changing for the other person because it has my eyeballs, their eyeballs. We're pinging back and forth, so that allows them to actually move forward in their business.
This actually kind of reminds me of, I interviewed, and we'll put this in the show notes, someone named Sarah Massey who did day rates or VIP days, but instead this is for coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of doing it as like a service, it's for coaching, and you get a full day. So, I mean, I guess you usually recommend that person will block off that entire day, right?
Yes. Yes.
What is one that you've done recently that you think really was successful for the person and they really got what they wanted out of it?
Working on a sales funnel and figuring out what prompts needed to be and where they needed to be. So they were looking at selling a PDF that provided a solution for their niche, and they weren't sure exactly, and they were using MailChimp. They weren't sure exactly how to do that and which which mapping points actually needed to be in place in order to trigger the next thing. And so we spent all day, they were working on their graphics, they were working on getting things uploaded into MailChimp, they were working on setting up, their tags within MailChimp so that once that basic funnel was triggered, then the next thing started happening.
Funnels, my least favorite thing. I really I had my first funnel finally, and I had a coach who helped me build it out and helped me through it. I had to hire some IT people to actually get it to work properly because it was not working properly. God, it has not upsold yet. I only put it out a month ago, so I shouldn't. But so far I've gotten the free stuff, but no one's actually been sold on upsell yet. So we'll see. I have to work on that. Sisterhood membership. So that ranges from $10 a month to $35 a month. How is that related to the podcast? And is this how you monetize your podcast?
It's one way I monetize. And because of my rebrand, I am exploring additional things because I'll try something, I'll give it a go and see how things go. And then I will pivot and do something different. So the sisterhood's been around for a while and it's had multitude of iterations. And I am actually looking to go into 2024 with a much different version of the sisterhood, which is basically just a basic level. And then once you're in the sisterhood, then I can sell you. 'Cause my biggest thing that I have said for years and years and years is I can't stand talking to dead air. And so in my email lists, I will look at them every 3 months, 6 months, and delete anybody that has not opened or interacted with something within the last 10, 20 email campaigns. Because talking to dead air does me zero good, and I don't want to pay to talk to dead air. And so I'll do the same thing in the Facebook group. I had a Facebook group very early on when I started the podcast as a way to just kind of bring people into the fold, and it was free. It was just a free community. But I ebbed and flowed as I was doing things. So I started out as a blogger back in 2008 and really dived into blogging in 2011 and was like, okay, so my peers were bloggers. And when I launched the podcast in 2015, that was who my audience was. But as I've gotten more away out of the influencer space, quote unquote, and gotten more into weddings and gatherings and roofing, and we have residential rental property, we have commercial rental property. As I've done more of those things, it's changed my audience. And so the people that I was speaking to and the lessons that I was learning through my own businesses weren't the same as who my original audience was. They primarily stayed bloggers. They didn't go out and expand as an entrepreneur. And so I felt that I was again speaking to dead air because what I was teaching through the podcast was no longer relevant to them. And so I've been known to just shut down communities of large numbers because it wasn't doing my business any good. But I do have to say that with the podcast, this has been more of a personal passion project from the very beginning. It gave me a way. I started the series called #blogging education, where I was teaching how to blog and how to grow a blog. And then I pivoted, obviously, once I started doing other things, but it gave me an audience to talk to from the very beginning. And I think that that's sometimes when we go out and start things and we don't have an audience, we have to figure out how to get an audience. The wedding business, I didn't have an audience. I had to start from zero. And so having these different things throughout the years has attracted new people based on what it is that I'm doing, and then detracted people. So I've had to stay mindful, but again, at the end of the day, I can't speak to dead air. I can't sell to dead air. So I'm constantly going through and cleaning house because again, you can't make money from somebody that doesn't open your email or somebody that doesn't interact with you. I've also cleared out my Instagrams a couple of times because those people were following me from the beginning of Instagram and no longer had active accounts.
Right. And that's interesting. And I think it's brave because I think a lot of people nowadays will be scared to do that, right? Because it's kind of like this, man, but this shows that I have an audience. Even if the audience is not your correct audience and the audience that isn't paying attention to you, people are scared to lose those followers and those people that were once interested in them. So I love hearing that you do clean house and that it's important for your business in order to move forward to make sure your message is reaching the right people. So tell us a little bit about your Sugar Creek event rentals and then also the roofing business that you have with your husband.
So Sugar Creek came about. I was actually hosting a baby shower for one of my close friends way back in the day, 2012-ish. And after that, I went all out. I went and bought things for the theme. And I've always loved antiques. I've always loved vintage. And I get that, I feel like, from my mom. She had antique booths and multiple locations growing up. And my house was full of them growing up. And my friend, who I host the baby shower for, came to me and she was like, hey, so I have this friend down in this other town and she does rentals, but primarily for like game days and stuff. And I'm like, what, like, you mean folding tables, folding chairs, that kind of thing? And she was like, yeah. And I said, that sounds boring. Like, I don't want to do that, but I will be your biggest cheerleader and you go for it. And then she got engaged and she took her bridal portraits and she rented a vintage sofa from somebody in our market. I had no clue that was a thing. And she was like, hey, so I just rented this vintage sofa for my bridal portraits. What do you think about doing vintage rentals? And I'm like, is that really a thing? And she was like, yeah. She sent me the name of the company she rented from, and they had a beautiful collection of rental items. And I was like, yeah, so let me start brainstorming. I had, between her collection and my collection, because I had inherited from my mom, who passed away when I was 24 years old, I got all of my mom's things. And we had like 300 items between the two of us. We
Wow.
were like, well, this
And in
seems
good
like a no.
quality?
Yeah.
Like good quality? Yeah.
Yeah, no brainer. Why don't we try this? And in the beginning, we didn't know about weddings. Truly, we were like, what about baby showers and tea parties and that kind of thing? And because that was primarily what our collection consisted of. And so we tried that and realized we weren't marketing to the right zip codes, because that matters if you want to
Yes.
get paid. And so her photographer for her wedding was like, hey, if you really want to make this a thing, why don't you come into the wedding industry? Why don't you start networking into the wedding industry and pivot? Come out of baby showers, come out of tea parties, because it looks like you're struggling, and we were. And we both had jobs, so it was kind of a side hustle still at that time. And so yeah, so we got into weddings, and then she and I went our separate ways. She ended up moving, and I got to rebrand. So we started under a different name. I rebranded into Sugar Creek in 2017, and I got to be intentional. That was kind of the thing that was lacking in our original business model. Was we were just doing it to try it. There was no business plan. We were just attempting to see what would, stick, what noodles could we throw and would actually hold. And so when I rebranded, I really dug deep into what it was that I wanted to do. And that meant from marketing, from what came into my collection, and how I would show up networking, etc. And Sugar Creek has grown in ways that I never fathomed when we started this business back in 2014. And I've had opportunities to work with Paramount and Yellowstone. I've had
Oh,
opportunities to
cool.
work with Ed Sheeran. I just worked with Wingstop. And
Oh, wow.
we just did a big private festival that had Willie Nelson as the headliner. And it's brought me opportunities that I never would have dreamed of. But because of me being intentional and purposeful in what came into my collection, how I marketed myself, when I show up in person to network, I'm Sugar Creek, because I am always dressed similarly based on my brand. And so I am living, breathing Sugar Creek. I always network in some kind of a hat. And that is what people remember me by. Oh my gosh, you're the girl with the hat. And so that's what has been the building blocks to Sugar Creek. It's what's been the building blocks for everything else that we have tackled. It's why I wrote the book, Pillars and Purpose, How to Build a Business That Works for You. Without a strong foundation of these pillars that I talk about, you can't really grow. You're, again, throwing spaghetti noodles at the wall. And my husband and I, just pivoting it over into the roofing business, 2020 was a hard year for us. Events shut down because of the pandemic. How I made core money was gone. And thankfully, because of investments that we made, we had bought in 2018 a 2-acre property that had a small shop. I was able to rent out that small shop to a tenant, so that helped pay our bills. We also have an RV storage facility on the same property, so those people that were storing their RVs helped pay our bills. And my husband had an opportunity to start being a roofing salesperson. And without him stepping into that industry with no knowledge of construction from that standpoint, it really saved us. And he went to the owner of that company in the very beginning and said, listen, my wife and I, we are entrepreneurs through and through. Once I have this figured out, I'm giving you fair warning that I will be starting my own. So this is going to be an educational, I will work my butt off for you. He was a top salesman within a few months.
And they were okay with that then? They were okay with just being like, yeah, sure, we know you're going to peace out and possibly be a competitor?
Yes, because he was a subcontractor, not an employee. And he was running his show with subcontractors all as instead of employees. So everybody was 1099 if you were a salesperson. So you were basically on a commission structure. And so there was nothing holding him there. And the only reason that we ended up pivoting faster and starting our own company was due to the owner of the business not having any integrity. A couple of his salespeople got into a neighborhood they weren't allowed to be in, and they were asked to leave. They started a ruckus. There were weapons pulled on them, and it was videoed. And then came all of the negative reviews and, the cancel culture. And my husband was like, okay, what are you going to do? And the owner of the company chose to do nothing, chose to allow the salespeople to stay on with his company. And my husband was like, listen, I worked really hard for every review that you have. And the fact that you are not disciplining or telling them to take a hike hurts me and how I go out and sell your company. And so this is where we part ways. And it didn't end well because of that. He was losing his top salesman, but integrity is very, very important to us, and he couldn't continue. So he came home and he was like, babe, we are going to be starting our own roofing business faster than we anticipated. And I still didn't know much about roofing or roofing sales or the insurance process, because we're actually storm restoration, a roofing company in storm restoration. And we're mainly 90% insurance work and 10% retail work. So I had to learn everything. And we're 2 years in, a little over 2 years in. And it's been a wild ride. Insurance is, that's a whole nother podcast episode. It's not fun because insurance is not actually for the homeowner. They are actually in it for themselves. They delay, deny, and defend.
What?
Yes.
Really?
And yeah, it just, the stories I could tell you, you would just, your jaw would never come off the floor. It's actually really, it's
Well,
it's a racket.
we had flooding actually in our basement, our finished basement, and they didn't want to pay for it and the homeowner's insurance. They said, you don't have flooding policy. We said, our sub pump broke. Like, this would never have happened. My husband got on the phone, asked to speak to a supervisor, and he was like, look, we've been paying you for years, and we don't have a flood insurance policy because A, we're not in a flood zone. B, we have a sub pump. So, and it broke. So I think and then they paid for it though. They did. But it took some fighting. If we had just been like, okay, the very first call.
Yep. And most people
would have had to pay for everything ourselves.
Yeah. Most people, once they hear a no from insurance, they think that that's where it ends. And that's not the case. They're just hoping that you don't keep pushing back so that they can keep more money in their pocket.
Right.
And they don't care how long you've been a customer. They don't care what your monthly premiums are. They do care if you pay on time. And but they don't care about the homeowner. And it is for me, it's a daily fight on behalf of my customers to get them paid appropriately for the items that are legitimately damaged, because it goes back to integrity. We do the jobs right. We are honest with the items, that are being paid for. We do everything that shows up on an insurance estimate, what we call a scope. And we make sure that they're paid appropriately, because they're notorious for they're just clicking buttons. They don't care if the job was paid appropriately. They want you to go away, and they will do their best to work against you. It's heartbreaking, because we've had especially the older community, our clients just get taken advantage of, and they don't realize. Here they are. I've had clients that have had the same insurance company for 50 years, and it's tooth and nail fighting. And it's me going to the city and getting city documentation about building codes, and still them denying things that are legitimately there, that they've paid. I don't know if you ever heard of ordinance and law coverage, but it covers, like, if you have to rewire your house due to a fire and your house isn't up to code. If you have that addition to your policy, then insurance is required, because you're paying for it, to bring your house up to code based on the thing that's out of code. And we've had clients that have actively paid for that for decades, and they still refuse to bring something up to code. And it's heart-wrenching. And of course, it frustrates my husband. We would probably I don't know where we would be if he was the one actually dealing with the insurance, but he's not, thankfully. But it is frustrating, because it's like, I am providing you building code. We do have to do these things per building code. That is state law. And there are city officials that are in, positions where they have to uphold said building code, because it is state law, and they don't care. They don't care.
That sounds
bizarre.
so frustrating.
It is.
So you have the roofing business with your husband, obviously. You've got the event rental, the antique event rental. That's so unique. I love it. And then you have your coaching business as well. So how do you keep all these balls in the air, and how do you manage all these businesses at once?
So, that it can be a challenge. In one given day, the focus could solely be on roofing, and there's not a whole lot going on with Sugar Creek. So it's easy. I do have a team. I have a full-time assistant that helps me specifically with Sugar Creek, and I have a part-time assistant that is our bookkeeper for our roofing business. But then it's just me and my husband. We do have salespeople that work for us, so they're out doing their thing, but it is just me and him, and I am primarily the it person. And so when we are busier with one thing, I may not be as busy with another business, and vice versa, which what we have chosen to step into as entrepreneurs, it has worked out. But then there are times where it is full on wedding season for Sugar Creek, and we just had a massive storm in our market where we are getting an influx of work. And so then I'm like, working really, really long hours, because I can't shove it all into an 8-hour day. I would love to shove it into an 8-hour day, but that's not feasible. And I will be working 7 days a week, because that is what it takes in order to keep things going. And you start to realize, okay, where's the breaking point, first of all, and when do you need another team person? And so we're in this cusp of the growth of Sugar Creek, and the growth of our roofing company is at a point where the roofing company, I need help. There's so much that goes into one client's file from start to finish that it can take me, if I'm doing a supplement. So let's say I get the insurance paperwork and it's skinny. It's what we call it. It's skinny. They didn't push enough buttons, because they are just button pushers. And so it'll take me anywhere from 4 to 6 hours to supplement the initial estimate from the insurance company, because of the lack of button pushing. And it's me staring at photos that either one of my salespeople or my husband took of the house. and going around and being like, okay, they missed this, they missed this, they missed this, they missed this. And my list can be a mile long. And then I have to add that in. So I not only have to build out what they originally wrote, but then I have to supplement the items that were missed. And I can increase anywhere from 30% on the minimum to 200% the actual total price of the estimate. And that takes time because attention to detail is very, very important, especially in construction practices. You want to make sure all your T's are crossed, your I's are dotted in case a building inspector shows up right in the middle of you doing whatever it is that you're doing. And yeah, it can be hard. And so then things do start slipping through the cracks, but I am grateful to have a team. When I wasn't large enough to have a team, I still did everything. I did all of our social media. I was the it. I wore all the hats. And I know that as an entrepreneur, especially when you're first starting out, even the first 2 years, you might still be wearing all of the hats, and you have to figure out at what point do you decide that you can hire somebody. And your spotlights into that are looking at what balls are you consistently dropping, and then what do you not like doing? Because finding somebody that is really, really good at the things that you hate doing is just going to help push your team or push your business. You're going to grow your team, but push your business forward because you didn't like doing it. That's why it stayed undone on your to-do list.
Mm-hmm. And how does that, though, affect your mental health, do you think, when you're managing all these things and maybe you're not even ready to hire, or maybe you are, but you're in this place where it just feels so overwhelming? How does that feel for you mentally, and how have you worked through that?
For the most part, I have made it a point in my business that by the time I get to Friday, I'm unplugged for most of the weekend. And having that boundary for me has been life-giving because I don't feel the pressure of constantly having to be on. And when I did feel like I was having pressure of constantly being on, whether or not it was people asking me for things or me being behind because my to-do list is a million miles long, there was a moment earlier in this year, 2023, where I was ready to just be done. And I had so much overwhelm with what was going on in my personal life, with some salespeople that we have or had in our business pushing back against me, taking advantage of me. And there was just a lot. And I was ready to just be done. Like I was on the ledge and I was peering over the ledge, and it was really scary. I was in the darkest place of my life. And here's the thing about being in a dark place. You don't see it coming. You think you're strong. You think that that will never be you. I wouldn't wish a dark place on anyone, not even my worst enemy, because it is so consuming that you've got these voices in your head saying you're not good enough. You have these voices in your head saying you don't belong here. You don't have a seat at this table. You haven't deserved what you've earned. You aren't, even though you're working hard, it doesn't matter. And I allowed those voices to scream at me to a point where I wanted them to go away. I didn't know, even though I am a very strong person and I have endured a lot of loss in my life. I lost my mom when I was 24 years old. I lost my brother to an accidental overdose when I was 30. I've had so much personal loss, but I just pushed it aside. And out of sight, out of mind. I'll deal with it whenever the grief bubbles up. But let me tell you, if you do not work through challenges in your life, regardless of whether they're due to loss, they're due to a setback, they're due to something not going the way you thought it would go, if you don't deal with those things in the moment, that negativity, that demon, that whatever you want to put to it will bubble up out of nowhere. And it will force you to have to deal with it. And if you allow that bubble to be greater than you, you are looking straight at a very dark place. And like I said, I don't wish that dark place on anyone because I was there and it terrified me. But it seemed at the time the demon was bigger than me. And I just wanted the demon to go away.
And how
And
did you work through it? Because you're here today, obviously, so you were able to work through it. How'd you do that?
My husband, he looked me in the eyes and said, "Do I need to take you somewhere?" And it was like a moment where it finally triggered me to find something deep in I didn't want to leave at that moment. The moment he said, "Do I need to take you somewhere? You are scaring me." I realized, no, I still have something to fight for. I still have things that I haven't accomplished yet. Why am I allowing this to consume me? Why am I allowing this demon to win? And I looked at him and I said, I just literally needed you to look at me like that and tell me that you are willing to take me to get help. And so I enlisted therapy and talk therapy. Also, I work out every single day or at least 5 to 6 times a week because it is a place for me to go where things aren't rolling through my head and I can focus on working on myself and getting physically stronger, but mentally stronger. It allows me to unplug. And then also going back to having that rule, once I hit Friday, I am unplugged. And I realized the wedding and event world is primarily held on the weekends. That's why I have an assistant. My assistant is the one handling our social media. So I can still stay unplugged. I don't have to break that rule for myself. So Friday through Sunday, very rarely am I doing anything besides randomly scrolling occasionally. But I do try and really focus on how do I strengthen myself internally, whether it is giving myself a break, whether it is picking up a book, whether it is taking a hot bath, whether it is going for a walk, whatever it might be that I need in that moment, I give myself that grace to do that and be that. And having that boundary that this is important to me. At least on Friday, I'm done. Saturday and Sunday, I tried to stay off, but there might be things that I have to accomplish. But giving yourself that boundary to take care of yourself is so incredibly important, because if you can't be who you are every single day with people depending on you, whether it's your spouse or your children or your coworkers or your assistants or the people that work for you, if you can't show up for them, then how do you show up for yourself? And so making sure that that's important to show up for yourself every single day and to take care of yourself and to know when you're towing a line that looks scary, figure out what is making it look scary and then start working on it. So talk therapy, action therapy, I just learned that word, and that's actually taking care of yourself physically, whether it's through working out, Pilates, yoga, whatever you might do. Action therapy works wonders for me. Sometimes I've struggled with talk therapy because I'm a talker, if you haven't learned that by now. But I've reversed the roles because I'm a natural coach, I'm a natural teacher, and I've had therapists who have flipped the script on me where I am now the coach and the therapist. And that's not fair for somebody that truly needs talk therapy, to find somebody that can stay anchored in what they do and to not give me back their life story, because I truly don't care about your life story if I'm the one in talk therapy. So I've had to fire some therapists because we didn't blend, because they, I don't know, dropped a mask, stepped over a boundary, and it was no longer effective for me. So you have to be your greatest advocate with what therapies work for you and to draw a line if you feel like that person's not being your strongest cheerleader, your greatest cheerleader, because you're paying them for a reason and you need to be gaining something from it, not the other way around.
Thank you for sharing with us that, because I think it's important, your story, because so many entrepreneurs, I think, struggle and maybe get to a ledge and they don't tell anyone and they don't share it because they are so obsessed. Maybe that's not the right word, but they just want to always look like they have it together and that they're like, they can do anything, right? And excuse me. And I think your story is an important window into seeing that, no, that's not true. Like, there are people out there who run multiple businesses and just can't keep it together. But you took these steps, and that's what's so helpful too. You tell your story, but you're like, here's what's worked for me. It might not work for everyone, but like, you need to find a way. And I also need to work out all the time. And like, people don't understand that. And I'm like, it keeps me sane. Like,
Yes.
people think I'm just working out all the time because I'm obsessed with the image or something. I don't know. No, it keeps me sane. Like, you can tell when I have not worked out in a while because it's like, uh-oh, she's real negative. It's like an underlying negativity, you know? So I appreciate that. Thank you. So like, we're looking at all these businesses right now that you have. It's a lot. Can you think of one action item you think you took that really stands out that helped you grow your business to 7 figures?
I think it comes down to having gumption, first of all,
Good
and
word.
knowing that you don't know it all, but you're willing to learn, and being a sponge and not being scared to find somebody in your industry. Maybe they don't need to be in your market. I remember when I first started out with the Sugar Creek business, I reached out to somebody in the Tennessee market. I didn't want them to feel like I was about to encroach upon their business. So I went outside and found somebody that would still be considered a competitor in my market, but outside of my market, to say, these are the things I'm doing. Would you do anything differently? Is there something that you started out or that you're currently doing in your own business that you think would be beneficial for me to test and tune? So I think that having the mindset of you don't know it all, you will never know it all, and to be open to constantly learning. I think once we get to a point in our business where we're just in that hamster wheel and we never allow ourselves to step out and look at that 360, feet elevation view, that we're like, how can we learn anything more? And I can tell you, you can always learn something new, for the simple fact that algorithms are constantly changing, new platforms are constantly being invented, and you have to stay open to learning. I look at one of my former hairstylists. This is totally random, but this makes sense in business terms. One of my former hairstylists, she never went and got education. And I'm like, how do you know that you still know? Like, how do you know that you're still able to do X, Y, and Z? How do you grow in your business? And so I continue to get the same cut and color without any advancements. And I was like,
Right.
and so I asked her, like, hey, when was the last time you went to a conference or you learned a new technique? And she literally looked at me like I was dumb. Like, why would you ask me that? And I'm like, but you are the owner of this hair salon. Why would you not want to be learning? And I realized that I didn't want to continue being a patron because she wasn't interested in continuing her education. And I think that's important as a business owner, is regardless of whether or not you have a priority with a license that you might hold. Like, I look at real estate professionals and they hold a real estate license and they are required to do X amount of continuing education every single year. Regardless of whether or not you're required, you should be doing continuing education, whether or not it is you taking a course, whether it is you attending a conference, whatever it might be.
Having a coach.
Having a coach, absolutely. Finding somebody that is in your realm that is like 5 years or 10 years senior to you, go and hire that person. Invest in yourself, because A, it will make you a stronger business person, but B, it will also show your team that you're in this for the long haul. You're not going to get stagnant. You're not going to allow yourself to just stay at this one baseline. And it also helps you to keep things interesting. Like, I just participated in the Wedding MBA, which is a business conference for wedding professionals. It happens in Las Vegas every single year. And my assistant, she doesn't know it yet, but she's going with me next year. And I came back this year and she was like, okay, what'd you learn? I want to know. Because she's actively running our marketing. She is writing our emails. She is, doing the Instagram reels. She's doing all the things. And she wants to be the sponge because she knows how important education is for me and for us to move forward. So be a sponge, Do not be scared to ask a question when you don't know the answer, and seek out additional resources, whether it's education, hiring a coach, networking. That's a huge piece to being a business owner. Find your local chamber of commerce and get yourself involved with other business owners and show up at the chamber events. Like, network. That is how you meet people. It is how people refer you.
Yeah.
And actively networking keeps you top of mind for somebody looking for something specific to what you do.
Or if they know someone, I teach this in my course about networking, because I feel like a lot of new business owners are like, I don't know, I have an online business. Well, I work with online business owners. Like, I don't know, I have an online business, a freelance business. I don't need to be just at a networking event. I'm like, don't go thinking you're going to get a client. Go to practice your pitch. Go to stay top of mind so someone can refer you. Of all the networking events, I've actually never gotten a client, but I've always been maybe referred, or people have found me through the Chamber of Commerce or whatever. And that said, hey, I know someone who needs someone, like, here's Kiri, whatever. And that is so important. I think it's overlooked by a lot of new business owners. 100% agree with that.
I do too. And just to add to that, be a connector.
Yes.
If you're out networking, be a connector, because then people will realize you're not in this solely for yourself. You truly want to create relationships with other people. And so if you can be viewed as that connector, you will stay more top of mind for people when it is the thing that they are looking for.
Yes, absolutely. Can you give me, what do you think is one of the biggest mistakes you've made growing your businesses? Any of them? And what did you learn from it?
Right when I first decided to do a podcast, this was 2014 is when I heard my first podcast. And I was like,
can I interrupt for a second?
Yeah.
I saw in my research that you have not missed a week.
I have not.
And like, you have like 400,
Ever.
500 episodes. How many?
400 I record today. So episode 441 gets recorded today, but I've never missed a week, and I have never replayed an episode.
That is amazing.
Thank you.
For any like podcasters or people who listen to podcasts, like, I struggle sometimes. So I'm struggling right now, to be honest, because I had a lot of reschedules, and then I went on vacation, and then I got sick. And I've never been behind in my life. But you're going to air in probably like 2 weeks because I'm that far behind. And I was like, what do I do if another person reschedules? I'm in trouble, right? Because then I don't have something lined up, and this has never happened in 4 years that I've been podcasting. So for you to go every week, that is amazing. I give you my kudos.
I have to say, I'm a professional procrastinator, but I have an amazing editor who's been with me since episode 1. And he just knows that my episode's either coming through. I used to be really good at having things in the can, but I'm a solo show. I don't interview people very often. When I do, obviously there's a lot more planning involved, but I just shoot from the hip. I get behind the microphone and I start spewing whatever it is that I'm going to be talking about. And I legitimately, so the episode I'm recording today will be the episode you hear tomorrow, because I am a professional procrastinator. And
so what has happened then when you've gotten sick? Because this has just happened to me. So I'm like, I had to reschedule. I lost my voice. I literally lost my voice last week.
I'm going to knock on wood. I'm going to knock on wood that I have just made it work. I was in Vegas last week, and legitimately I had planned to record before I left, because I hate recording on the road. It's not pleasant for me. And it just, because of personal things going on in my world, it just didn't line up. And so I had to take my mic with me, and I recorded in my bathroom in my hotel in Vegas. It was fully marble, everything. And so I had to bring in towels and pillows to dampen the sound, the echo.
I was going to say the bathroom. Interesting choice. That's got a large echo.
Well, thankfully the toilet room. So it was confined.
Okay.
And so I was holding the mic because I didn't bring my stand, and because my stand weighs a lot. And so, suitcase space. And anyway, so I made it happen. And it's not the first time that I've recorded in a bathroom, and it won't be the last, but I when I know I'm going somewhere, or when I know that there's just no way, then I will batch record. And then my editor really, really loves me. But he just knows that my audio is coming in on a Sunday or Monday, and he's working on my audio on a Tuesday. He's a professional editor. And like I said, he's been with me since episode 1, 2015. And he just knows that. Now, when he travels, he will give me a heads up, because his wife is from Brazil, I think. And so he will say, hey, Taylor, I'm going out of the country and my internet is going to be spotty. So I need you to get me 2 episodes by this date before I go, so that I can work them in. And I will just readjust my schedule. It's just, this is what works for me. I don't recommend anybody else. Like, this is the do as I say, like, don't do as I say, or
Right.
don't do as I do, but do as I
Yes.
say. Yes. And this is just what works for me in my life. And if I could get back to having canned episodes, that would be great. He would love me forever. But it's just,
It's not
there's so
going to
much
happen
going
like
on.
that.
Yeah.
So I
And
totally derailed us there. I was asking
that's
you
all right.
actually what was one of your no, it's my fault. I got like super excited. I was like, oh yeah, wait a minute. You had all these episodes. What was one of the biggest mistakes you made in your business, and what do you learn from it?
Okay. So it goes back to launching the podcast, and it has to do with cancel culture. And this was before cancel culture had a name. And I was working on my first 3 episodes to get into Apple. Back then it was still called iTunes. And because you didn't know when you would get approved once you
No,
took
it's
your
still like that.
episodes. Yes. And so I was like, okay, as long as I can get them in early June, get them uploaded, it will at least, because my launch date was July 1st, 2015. And I wanted those 3 episodes in, because that's what the recommendation was back then, so that I could be ready to be like, hey, I have this podcast. 3 episodes are available for you to listen to. And so early June, they went in really quickly, actually. I got approved into Apple very quickly, which was surprising. And I had hired a web developer off of Fiverr to create a podcast website for me. I understood a little bit about building websites. I'd been a blogger for quite some time, but the podcast websites back then looked like something I couldn't tackle. I don't know why, but I was just like, I'll go find a web developer. So I was doing research, and I was like, I like this, I like this, I like this, I like this. Now build me these things. And instead of doing that, he pulled one podcaster's website, pulled their entire code, and posted it live on my URL without telling me. And so I happened to be checking in, because he was not really doing a great job of communicating through Fiverr about where he was in the process. And I went to my website to check on something, and I'm staring at somebody else's website on my URL. And I'm like horrified, because that is not what I asked for. I had given him a laundry list of things that I liked from other podcasters' website that were elements, not their whole code. And so I fired him, and then panicked, because I didn't know. I should have just crashed my website. I know how to crash a website. Done that plenty of times. I should have just crashed it. But I was like, you know what? I'm not out in the world yet. I'm going to quickly fix this. So I spent a couple of days pulling their code out and redoing everything, and, used YouTube and all the tutorials I could find to help me out. But while it was live, one of their listeners found it.
Oh my
and
God,
went,
how?
I honestly don't know, but went straight to them. And instead of them approaching me to find out what the heck, they recorded a special podcast episode about me.
Oh my gosh, that's worse than I thought you were going to say. I thought you were going to say they got lawyers involved and you got a letter.
No.
Oh my God.
I was canceled before I ever got started. And I was so conflicted, because it was not intentional. It was, I was so embarrassed, because it was my character. Like, my character came into question, and I am not the person that likes confrontation. I try to stay like, I'm black and white. I know what the laws are. Like, I understand copyright infringement. I know all of these things. I'd been actively teaching these things through my blog. And I was horrified that they could think that I was that kind of person. And I was going to a couple of my mentors and my coach, and I was working with a coach who knew these girls. And I was like, I like, do I reach out to them? Like, what do I do? How do I fix this? And my coach canceled me, would not work with me anymore, which says more about her character than mine. And one of my mentors was like, they're not in a place to listen. They're on the defense. And if you reach out, it's going to make them want to get back behind their microphone. They're not ready to hear you. So you're just going to have to let this go. And I'm like, but I didn't do this on purpose. I hired a horrible developer whose obvious character was super flawed. I would never have said yes to this. Why was this not on a test website that couldn't be found? Like, why post it live? And I allowed that moment before I ever was officially live, before I was ever officially Boss Girl Creative, I allowed that to hold me back for more than 5 years because I was terrified to call out the critics, to call out anybody that would want to come on the attack and remember that moment.
Yeah.
It took me a year to be comfortable putting a book out on Amazon because I was terrified that I would be attacked once I published. So I allowed that one moment in time to define me for years. And it took me forever, a lot of internal work to move past it. And I still have a little bit where I'm still scared to put myself out there.
Did you ever reach out to them ever and try to clarify it? Never?
I didn't. It showed me more about who they were and I just felt like there was no way I could ever, our paths have never crossed.
Would you do it now?
Why
not?
Probably for fear again. The fear.
You could send them this podcast
great.
episode and you could say, hey, I talked about this story. If you're interested, it's at this minute. And you can hear the whole story.
I've podcasted about it once I was comfortable talking about it. But
yeah, send them that episode.
Yeah.
I don't know. I know. You don't want to dredge up the past. Why dredge up the past, right? I get it. But there's a part of me that's just like, wow, it took up so much mental space for so long. I feel, yeah, but I would probably be like you. I'd be like, nah, never mind. I just don't it took me so long to get over it. Why would I? Yeah. It's easy for me to say, no, go talk to them. But no, I don't think I actually would. So I'm full of BS. Wow, what a story. Oh my gosh. And like when you're just starting out, that's just like,
it was
like, it's like a knife in the heart. Yeah. It's just like, how do you bounce back from that? That's so hard.
It was. Fear held me back for so long. And I've never been shy from a microphone. Like I truly am an introvert, but I can put on extrovert's cape, and you give me a microphone, I can be on stage, I can public speak, whatever. But to be called out in such a manner, to have my character challenged, it just brought in so many more fears. And again, this happened before cancel culture had a name. Yeah. And I had people writing negative reviews on my show before I was ever launched. And I had to go to Apple and say, please pull this. This is an assassination on my character. This is defamation. And to have to do that right out of the gate when there was literally no malice, no intent for me to do something like that. And it didn't help there's a little caveat. It didn't help that our names were similar. And I had no clue who they were when I chose my name in early 2015. I selected my name. I bought my name. I did the research. The only person, so Boss Girl Creative, the only person that had a name similar was Girl Boss. And okay. I researched to the hilt of, copyright infringement, trademarks, etc. And there was nobody that I came across that had anything like my name. And so I bought my name. I went through Marie Forleo's B School that spring in 2015, hired a coach who was working on with me to help develop Boss Girl Creative, which is the one that fired me after this happened. And yeah, so I had my name way before I ever knew these people existed, and they never came up in any searching that I did. And I did extensive searching because, again, I didn't want lawyer letters. I didn't want to be infringing on anybody. And yeah, and then it happened.
Boy. Oh, that could be a whole episode on in and of itself. Like, how do you bounce back? And oh man. Well, we are pretty much at the end of our time. Well, we're actually a little over. So let's if you could give advice to women as they try to grow their business to 7 figures, what would you tell them? And why do you think sometimes women hit roadblocks and they fail and they don't move forward?
I think they stop trusting their gut. I think they stop thinking that they are strong enough to get to the next level. And I think imposter syndrome is a real thing that we struggle with. I find it. I actually just experienced this. I was on the news last week as a celebrity designer. Would I ever give myself that moniker? No, but people having heard my resume have given me that moniker. And I legitimately, like, I won't watch it. My assistant has watched it. My other assistant, like my family has watched it. I won't watch it because I'm too scared to watch myself be on TV. And they're like, "But you killed it." And I'm like, "Yeah, but they've labeled me this celebrity designer because I'm also an event designer." And they're like, "But you are." And it's like I don't feel comfortable with that title. Like, do I really belong at that table? And if you look at my work, not being boastful because I'm not an ego or a boastful person, but I have gotten there. I can wear that label, but it makes me cringe. Like, do I really belong with that label? And
how do you coach women who struggle with that? Because you're struggling with it yourself. So how do you coach women who are struggling with imposter syndrome?
it's interesting because it will flare up at the times where I'm like, wait, I thought you worked on that already. And so it's easy to coach it because you aren't the person in it. You aren't the
Yeah.
person feeling it. And so I have all the things that I can tell myself and I can tell my clients. But when it flares and you're like, whoa, I thought I already worked through that. But then you realize you got some more work to do. And then it also takes your inner circle so that you can say, hey, this is what I'm feeling. What do you think? And they say, oh, Taylor, come on. Are you kidding me? Why are you feeling that way? And it's just nice to have people that really are cheerleaders for you, to have a strong circle. But yeah, so coaching it is a whole different avenue for me because I'm not in it. But when I do find myself in it, which it flared up for me last week, I was like, whoa, you got some more work to do, sister.
Have you read The High Five Habit by Mel Robbins?
Ooh, I haven't. I love Mel Robbins.
Yeah. Okay. So I think it's her latest book from like 2 or 3 years ago. I think it could have come out during 2020. But she advocates like high-fiving yourself in the mirror every day and then eventually working in a mantra. There's way more to the book than that. But I found it actually helps me. And she has a bunch of science researching it. And I was first like, I was like, oh my God, I feel dumb, like high-fiving myself in the mirror. But it really does help with the imposter syndrome, I found. So check out that book. We'll put it in the show notes too. Yeah, check it out because I think it helps. And maybe you can recommend it to your own students as well. So tell us, where can we find you, your businesses? If you have anything you want to share with the audience for free, now it's time to tell us.
So you can go to bossgirlcreative.com. That will get you to the podcast, the Purposely Aligned Entrepreneur, and all 440 something episodes are there. I've got an episode guide and they're all, categorized by whether or not they're business episodes, blog episodes, marketing episodes, etc. And Sugar Creek Event Rentals is my specialty event rental business. I'm also an event designer, but you can find me there if that's of curiosity to you. And then our roofing company, if you happen to be in the DFW Metroplex, is smitty'sroofing.com. And that's where you can find me. And if you are interested in my book, Pillars and Purpose, How to Build a Business That Works for You, it is applicable to newbies, to veterans in business. If you are feeling like you are at a place in your business where you're like, I need to step back and really work on the building blocks because I've just been on that hamster wheel. This is a guidebook for you, no matter where you are in business. And you can get that at bossgirlcreative.com/pillars with an S book, pillars book.
Awesome. Thank you. Can you tell us, what is one philosophy, mantra, or quote you try to run your business by?
Always roll out your own red carpet because nobody else will.
I like it. I like it. Thank you. So thank you again, Taylor, for joining us on this interview, giving us so much advice that we found informative, that we found valuable. And again, if you're in our audience and you also found this to hit the sweet spot, share it with your friends, because sharing helps us grow, and Taylor will be so appreciative, as will I. So thank you. And make sure you sign up for our $1 million Tipping Point podcast newsletter, because we're going to be having exclusive content questions, specifically with Taylor. So thank you again.